Welcome to the show. I'm Matty Marshall, and we have the third stop on the tour coming in just next week as we are headed to Cincinnati for the Midwest Open and XL Major League Paintball. And stoked to have a man who minces no words and somebody I like to touch base with on a regular basis because, you know, he shoots it straight. So always like to get to see what is on the mind of Joey Blute. We're going to talk about the layout today. We are going to be breaking down the brackets and get our thoughts on who has a legit chance. Obviously, Paintball fifth best team in the world right now, sitting on 3 wins in a row, trying to make it a historic 4 here. And they've had a crazy story, kind of rewritten the rules here as what is going to be necessary to be the best team in the world. Everyone is on their heels right now. So yeah, without any further ado, going to jump into it here with Joey Blute, Tampa Bay Damage. Definitely a big favorite here, and with a little bit of controversy, they just picked up Marcelo Margot. So bolstering their lineup even more, and looking forward to pick Joey's brain again on brackets, layout, to pick up Marcelo and Damage's chances here at this event. So let's bring in Joey Blute. Looking forward to, again, getting his take on this. So Joey, how you doing, bud? First of all, how are things out in Florida?
Good, man. Hot. Really, really, really hot. Besides that, you know, everything's good. Family's good. Team's good. Just out here grinding.
So I always like touching base with you about things because, you know, you always kind of tell me exactly what you think about everything and don't pull many punches, whether we're having a conversation off air on the phone or if we're on a show. So let's just dive right into, the topic, one of the big topics of the moment, as the layout has just dropped a couple days ago, is this staggered layout, you know? So we kind of have a snake and a Dorito side on both sides. Didn't really look like in the comment section that the chat was super stoked on it. Are you stoked on this? Not stoked on this? What are your thoughts on this layout on the eve of this battle coming up here, event number 3?
I've never been a big fan of the mirror layout stuff. I understand trying something different and doing different things, and I'm all for that, but we should really keep that for regional events and maybe convincing some of them into testing these kind of things out before we throw them at our guys again. I don't know. To me, it's just these mirror layouts traditionally don't promote big moves and big runs. And you cut the snake into a quarter, it's going to be even slower. You got guys that can slip around everywhere. So there's going to be dudes hiding that you don't know where they're at, which is going to cause people not to move because they don't want to risk their lives. So I don't know. I've never been a big fan of these. It will be fun to figure out for you guys on Friday. I think come Saturday and Sunday, you guys might pretty much know what everything's going to be and where all the cubby holes and hidey holes are and where the people are. There's going to be some surprise and mystery to where that guy in the center actually is, because he could be in the snake or he could be in the center 50. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the mirror layout. I like it when it's easy to have action on both sides. When you do the mirror layout, you kind of get rid of that. And you kind of force people into a slower pace game.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see, you know, looking at how you have the snake structure on both sides and they're using the beams to, you know, potentially funnel a crawler up near that 45, 50 yard line. And then Doritos on both sides. But if I was coaching on this layout or playing on this layout, I mean, it just honestly a lot comes down to who can we send and when. You know, I mean, how quick can we get up the field? I mean, how well can we utilize different unique and angles cross field to shut certain lanes off the breakdown? And have you guys got any spins on this layout or heard of anyone that's been playing it so far? We were
out there all day today.
Intel? What's the word going around the campfire? Yeah. Okay.
There's going to be a lot of hidey holes where people are. It's going to be hard to get wide on this field. You're going to have to risk a body if you want to go wide. You can funnel through the middle, but even the middle is going to get scary because it's kind of hard to figure out where people are. You're going to be able to shoot people on the break, but it's going to be hard to even tell necessarily where those guys were going because there's big open lanes on both sides. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we are only about 6 hours into the layout so far, so it's not like we've and we only had like 7 of us out there today. So tomorrow will be a little bit more telling because we'll have the full group out there and we'll actually go out and grind on it a little bit more. You know, but again, I'm just not a fan of these. Like I don't think this promotes what we want. And then from a standpoint where you're at, being able to actually announce these games, it gets more and more difficult. If we're trying to make it for TV, then we should really try to make it for TV, not make it more difficult for people at TV.
Yeah, as soon as this one came out, I was kind of remembering back to, I believe, Texas a couple years ago with a similar situation, and I was calling it bottom side snake, top side snake, because I just don't know what else to call it. I mean, if anyone has an insight into what they think I should be calling that to make it a little bit more transparent, please, by all means, let me know. But, when you're looking at it from the perspective of a viewer on the screen, with the angles, unless we're breaking the 180 to flip around to the top side, or getting an angle from the backside, you're typically almost always looking at it, with a top side and a bottom side. So I just think top side snake and bottom side snake, top side D side, bottom side D side. But that's just more verbiage that I have to use in order to,
re-educate
in order
people.
to highlight where the flow of the action is going. So yeah, it's just it does become a little problematic for me on that standpoint, but I am kind of tempering that with, and I'm not just, we were talking just about this offline. I also am interested to see how it's going to go. I mean, it is an unconventional layout, and it is something that we don't typically see. It's really hard to win paintball tournaments. Is this going to change the result? Is it going to be easier for the teams that have had a hard time making Sundays to, like you said, lose a body out there and have something a slightly unpredictable change the outcome of a game? Is that going to happen enough times to kind of dictate that? I mean, we're going to jump into talking about the brackets and these teams and who we think has a chance to win. I'd love to get your thoughts, obviously, on the pickup of Marcelo. But yeah, you kind of had mentioned that there might be a little bit of a difficulty to figure out where that body came off and finding guys. And again, only like you said, 6 hours into it. But I am interested to see how this unconventional layout is going to play out. So I am a bit intrigued by that. Though I am not intrigued at the extra work I'm going to have to do and the extra words I'm going to have to say in order to make sure that everyone knows what the hell is going on during these games. Yeah, I don't know. Again, do you think bottom side, snake side, top side, snake side is the most transparent using words to describe what's happening? What do you think?
For us, we're actually going to go with just right and left. Like when we're on the field, there's the right side and the left side. It doesn't matter what side we're on. It's the right side and the left side. Obviously, for people at home, for you to commentate, that's going to be hard. You might have to do. They're doing red and blue still, right?
There was a change in the bunkers, so we didn't have red and blue at the last one. I was told that was going to be fixed at this one, so I'm hoping that is the case, and then that would make life a little bit easier for the viewers.
Significantly easier.
So we will see.
Yeah. If they do that, then you could always be like blue snake, red snake, and hopefully people can figure it out. But yeah, I mean, you guys are going to be using a lot of your little lines on the screen to show people where people are. And, I mean, you might have to do some more editing type stuff off the go so it helps people understand. But yeah, no, this is not going to be easy for you. I think I texted you that the other day, like, oof, sorry, bud. Because this is not going to be an easy one. That.
Yeah, I've got a lot of that the past couple of days. People are like, hey, good luck, brother. No, I have a little bit of experience with this. Again, with my job, I'm just trying to, as easily as I can, explain what's happening. Because a lot of times, we're cutting to action, but then there'll be something happening off screen. And when we have a snake side, D side, it's a little bit easier. Let me ask you this question, though. As far as personnel, like how do you think teams, how are you guys going to handle this, and how do you think teams are going to kind of handle this situation? Because once you get past that 50 on either side, it then turns into Doritos or snake. So do you think that changes anything, or do you think everyone's so versatile these days it just kind of is what it is? It's like with Chris Shear,
kind of is.
Just have him play, like, say.
Yeah, kind of is what it is. I'm not worried about that at all. Like, if Keith gets all the way down past the actual snake on the snake side and ends up in that brick or into those Doritos, he'll be just fine. If Chris ends up diving into that snake at some point in time on the other side, I'm okay with that, because that means we're on their side of the field and he's probably about ready to feast. So I don't think we're going to have any real issues with that at all. All of our guys are pretty versatile anywhere. I mean, at practices, I force them to play both sides of the field anyways. So, kind of sucks if you're not a great left-handed shooter and you're a Dorito guy at this event. Like, that's not so good for you. So all the really bad bad left-handed shooting snake guys are loving this.
Well, let me ask you this question because, again, you're always honest about things. I mean, I've had pro players, this is a minority opinion, but some guys are like, hey, you probably don't, if a guy's shooting left-handed or right-handed, like, you shouldn't mention that too much because, like, everyone can shoot right-handed or left-handed. And my pushback was always like, yeah, but it's still cool if you're any sort of casual viewer to understand how much of a skill that actually is. And then also, some guys aren't as good with their offhand, and some guys are better with their offhand because they've trained themselves. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that argument?
Some of these pros couldn't shoot left-handed to save their life. So for them to say not to mention it is just ignorant on their part. They all should be able to, but you can go out and watch. I've watched a lot of film, and you can go out and watch and see some of these guys cannot shoot left-handed to save their life. So I think it's smart. I think you're educating the people at home who are watching, mentioning stuff like that, and anyone who says differently is just not big picturing it. They're thinking of their own little cosmo.
Let's jump into this also, kind of moving away from the field, because until we kind of see this played a little bit more, kind of hearing a little bit of the same thing, I am wondering how much the middle is going to, it's not your kind of traditional middle. I mean, I think it still is. Yeah, there's some beams you have to jump over. It's not really conducive to those big launching moves because you are going to have to potentially jump over a beam unless you're cutting either to the, the left of that center brick and launching up that way to cut up a seam once you're at that, 45, 50-ish yard line. But you still have a launching pad with the, that 30-yard line bunker behind it. You have some towers there. You have the wedges on the side. But do you think that this middle is going to be utilized as much as we've seen recently on some layouts, or do you think the action is going to funnel out towards the corners or out the sidelines a little bit?
No, I think the middle is going to be super active on this field. I think you're going to see a lot of people going up in that second giant wedge on the snake side, or the middle wedge on the snake side. I think they're going to be going into that, and then that's where the game's going to slow down, because as soon as the guy hits that bunker, he can go backwards all the way back to snake 1. He could jump into snake 2. He could crawl into the center 50. Like one thing that we talked about today was, like, if you're calling there's a snake, you almost have to call there's a middle at the same time, because the dude could be up in that big wedge and just disappear, and you don't know where he's popping up at. He could go forward or he could go back. So it's going to keep people on their toes, which is going to make people not want to move, because if he goes up in the middle, his shots are way different than if he jumps into the snake side or heads over to the snake area or stays there, right? So I think that's one of the things that's going to make this field not go fast, especially on Sunday. I mean, every field slows down on Sunday, but this one could drastically slow down on Sunday, only because you can get lost out here. Super easy.
So another question that a lot of people were kind of asking about is how, talking about personnel for Tampa Bay Damage, the big pickup of Marcelo Margot. What are your thoughts on that pickup? I mean, we had talked as all that craziness was going down, as you were one of the options that Marcelo told me he was potentially going to go to after, things didn't work out with Impact. I was of the opinion, and I just think this is, I just don't know what paintball you've been watching for the past 5 years, or pretty much his whole career, that any team that got Marcelo was going to immediately get a boost to the roster. But kind of how did that go down from your perspective?
If you could get Kobe Bryant when he's a free agent, or if he gets cut from his team, would you pick up Kobe Bryant?
Yeah.
Is Kobe Bryant the greatest player ever? Is Kobe Bryant really, 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 really good? Yes. Can Kobe Bryant make a difference on your roster? Of course. So if you have the opportunity to get someone like a Marcelo, you go after it. You go after it the best you can, right? And I wasn't the only one that went after him. We were just the option he decided to go with, which I'm grateful for. Of course, he's going to make us better. Any team he goes to, he's going to make better. We've had him out here for a full weekend of practice, and he was out here today with the guys again. I mean, he fits right in. Like, we're not a bunch of kids anymore. We're all a bunch of grown-ass men. It also helps push the age of my team up a little bit more. I needed some more old people. So, you get those young guys and they want to stay up till 11, 12 o'clock at night. You get a bunch of old dudes. We're all like, hey, man, it's 8 o'clock. It's time for bed. Let's eat some dinner and let's go to sleep. So no 4-hour meetings, none of that stuff, because we got to get our sleep. So it's worked out really well in that aspect.
Yeah, no, I just think it's huge for you guys, especially with the injury to Brian Smith. How is Brian Smith? Is there a recovery time for him? Last I talked to you, what was the Achilles? How severe is that? And what is the recovery time are you guys looking at, you think, for Agent Smith?
So one good thing that we have is we have a team doctor who sponsors the team and helps us. So the second he got injured, we called him. He actually scheduled an MRI for Brian while we were still in Atlantic City. So he got home. We got home Sunday night. Monday morning at 9 a.m. he had the MRI. It was a tear. He went to the doctor immediately on Wednesday, and he had surgery on Friday. So he completely tore the Achilles, but he literally went from tearing it on Friday to having it surgery on Friday, the following Friday, which is best case scenario on an injury like that. They want to do the surgery sooner than later, because with the Achilles, I guess there's a stretching thing with it, and the longer it sits not stretched, the harder it is to get it to re-stretch, and the longer the recovery time is. He was in a cast for a while. They actually took the cast off last week. He's in a walking boot now. So, I mean, it's looking good, right? There's a lot of things that have changed over the years to help the recovery on that stuff. I hope I get him back this year at some point. If I do, it'll probably be World Cup. But if I don't, it is what it is. We'll ride out till next year. Picking up Marcelo definitely helped fill that void that Brian would have left. We're a pretty deep team, and we have a pretty deep roster. As you get older with the guys and their aging, I've gone out of my way to make sure we've had a thick roster just so we can have the depth for if something does happen to people. So would I have made a move if Marcelo wasn't available? Probably not. But again, if you have an opportunity to pick up someone like Marcelo, if Brian wouldn't have been hurt and Marcelo would have come open, I still would have gone after him. I mean, I've gone after him for 9 years straight, so nothing changes on that. Anytime there's a crack in the pavement, I go over there and, anytime he had any kind of potential issues, Dynasty missed a Sunday. Hey, Marcelo, you still happy? You know what I mean? That's my job. My job is to try to get the best talent we can on the team so we can win. Obviously, I believe in my guys, and I know we can win with my guys because we've won with my guys. But if I can get arguably one of the best guys to have done it, I'm going to do it. So, but yeah, no, Brian, as far as that's concerned, I'm hoping by World Cup we get him back. If not, definitely going into next year, he will be back. He's in a walking boot already. He's coming to practice tomorrow, hang out with the guys and see everyone. He's got the itch still. Like, he wants to play. He's jonesing for it. I asked him if he wanted to go to the event, and he's like, I'll go to Texas, but this one, I don't know. I don't know if this is a good one to go to. I think I'd be on my feet too long and potentially hurt myself more. And I was like, nah, it makes sense. So he'll be back for Texas to come hang out and stuff, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Well, it just, kind of fortuitous for the direction of the roster that you've built to be as deep as possible. It is an aging roster. You guys were a bit beat up towards the end of last season, added depth this offseason, and then with the injury to Smith that we've just been discussing, and now picking up Marcelo, you guys are as deep as any of the other teams out there. How does that affect your guys' training, though? There's so many different ways to train. A lot of teams have different mindsets on how they train, how hard they train, how often they train. I think that a lot of that has to do with where your guys are at. If you're, the analogy I like to use is that if you got a, pick your bladed weapon of choice, but once it's sharp and it can cut someone's head off, any more you sharpen it is just taking material off and weakening that blade. It's already kind of sharp, so you got to be pretty careful with it. But talk to me a little bit about the methodology behind building Damage and adding that depth and the fact that you do have an aging roster that was beat up a little bit towards the end of last season.
Yeah, so roster old or young, I've always liked the bigger rosters. A lot of people like the smaller ones. I've always wanted to have the extra bodies because you never know. I mean, like, let's be honest, like, even when we weren't young, people were still getting hurt, right? There was always something, or people were sick, or parents or whatever, something happened to somebody and somebody had to miss an event, somebody got a new job, somebody got somebody pregnant, somebody had a kid. So there's always a reason why somebody's not going to make something. So I've always tried to carry that 9-10. And a lot of the times I got a lot of kickback from that from the guys, because that means less play time for everybody, because somebody's going to have to watch because you can only have 5 on the field at a time. But over the years, I've always tried to maintain that. Now, to me, 10 is the minimum. Right. So last year we had 10 and we started the year with 10. And I don't think we played a single event with more than 8. World Cup, we were down to 7 because we lost so many guys because of injuries. And all the injuries we got at World Cup were at World Cup. right? It was diving into that snake. It was that back corner Dorito spot, jamming knees and hurting themselves. So, the guys stayed relatively healthy, but there's always going to be something with somebody. So having those extra bodies just helps. As far as the way we train, I mean, we play in the pits of hell. So it's 1,000,000 degrees here. Like, no bullshit. We're driving. I picked up Marcel yesterday at the airport, taking him to the hotel, and I'm like, "Hey, bro, like, just giving you a heads up. I know I told you this in advance, but it is really hot and it's super humid." He's like, "Yeah, man, I've been warming up. I've been going to the sauna. I've been drinking lots of water. I'm ready for this." Today around, I don't know, 12:30, he walks off and he goes, "I'm not ready for this." And I was like, "No, bro, no one is. Like, you can survive. You can survive in the pits of hell, and you can survive anywhere, right?" Big advantage is we go to other events, other places, and it's 87 degrees, and people are like, "It's so hot." And we're like, "No, this is nice, boys. This is real nice." So, we train a little different too, right? I'm all about quality, not quantity. I don't want to go out and run 60 points, 70 points. Like you said, the knives are already sharp. When we're doing a layout practice, it's to learn the layout. It's not to work on snap shooting. It's not to work on individual skills. It's to go out and learn the layout, to get the communication crisp and to work on the layout. Once the communication's crisp, it's just a matter about learning the layout. Once we learn the layout, I don't care if we play another point. Some of the guys definitely want to play more points. And those guys, I give them until it's not productive. That's my motto at practices, and it always has been, always will be. As soon as it becomes unproductive, meaning we're not getting any better, we're not actually learning anything, and we're just going through the motions, I usually call the day, whatever time that is. The last day, so tomorrow we'll go out, we'll play ourselves, we'll grind. We'll probably only play 4 or 5 hours tomorrow, but we're playing against ourselves the whole time, so it's almost double points. And then Saturday we have Distortion, Shock Semi-Pro, and New York Wrecking Crew. So I brought 4 teams out because it's so hot. Like, there's legit a chance that some of these guys that aren't from Florida, like the Northeast teams or the Midwest guys that are still dealing with, high of 82, when they get here, if I would have brought just one team, I don't know if they would have made it a whole day. I don't know if they can go 30 points. I honestly, it's really hot. So it kind of works to have the 4 teams and to go out and grind. But, Sunday we might only play 24 points just because I don't need any more than that. We're just practicing the actual game plans at that point and actually trying to execute what we want to do. And then after that, it's cruise control, right? Like, you go out to the event. I guess there's that 3-man thing going on at this one. We're going to go partake in, and then it's time to grind on the event.
As far as the 3-man, I that question about that, and then one more question about Damage and how you feel about this next event and your chances to win it. Obviously, you think this, and everyone should think this. Damage has a chance to win every event with this current roster based on how many events you guys have won in the past few years. As far as the 3-man, though, what how are you running that personnel wise? Only 3 dudes play. You're bringing the whole roster to that to kind of, how are you looking at that?
We're going to show up with, so I'm not 100% sure because I'm not 100% sure of the rules. We were originally told we could have anyone we want on the roster, which we were just going to roster everybody and then play whoever's clicking or whoever's there, whoever feels the most rested, whoever wants it. Then I was told it's going to be 5-person on the roster. So as soon as I figure out the full numbers on that, I'll let you know. But 100% honest, just play any of them. I just want to get them spins on the pro layout for the actual event. I'm confident that, especially on this layout, I can go out and play 3-man with anyone on my roster and have a really good chance of still winning.
So looking at your, again, few teams have ever won pro paintball tournaments, period. And it's been a rough few years for anyone that wasn't the top teams. But looking, as I was kind of crunching some numbers today and getting ready for this show and the event next week, and I was looking at last year, and last year you guys started off 6th, 7th, and then you won. And then this year, lo and behold, 6th and 7th. So I'm just kind of wondering how and how does Damage look at tournaments? Because there has been a couple situations where you guys would pop off a 10th and then come back and take a 1st. Actually, you did that a couple years ago where you took a 10th and then won 2 in a row, and then came back and went 8th, 5th, 13th, and then 6th, 7th, 1st. And then now you're starting, and then 9th at the end of the year, and then 7th, and then or 6th and 7th. So it's, you guys aren't super, consistent. But when you look at, say, like an X Factor, right? It's been 6 years since X Factor's won a tournament, but they have a ton of second places. They have more second places than you guys have, but you guys have more wins than they do by a large margin. You guys have won 4 events since 2002. They haven't won any in 6 years. But they have a lot more second places. So, how is that a mindset thing versus, say, like a talent or preparation thing? Or is it just luck? What do you think?
So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, right? Like, so to win a paintball tournament, it's honestly probably one of the hardest things you could ever do, right? So everything has to be going right. You have to be playing good. The refs have to be going your way. The calls have to be going your way. The paint has to be perfect. There's so many different things that have to be right. The equipment has to be working flawlessly. And even then, sometimes it's a coin flip, right? So we missed the last one in overtime against Dynasty, right? We win that one, we're top 4, and then this conversation's not happening. So I would say that I would tell you this, I almost guarantee you could ask anyone on X Factor, they would rather take 10th at 3 events and win 2 events than take 2nd at every event. Second hurts more than taking. I'd rather go home Sunday or Saturday night than take a 2nd place. It is the worst feeling in paintball. I know people at home are going to have a hard time understanding that, but it's not only you're leaving on a loss. You're leaving on a loss and you're questioning everything. 2nd place is the absolute worst. Absolute worst. I'd rather get knocked out early than have to go to the 2nd place game. And I almost guarantee you everyone on that team would agree with me, because it's just awful. And I guarantee they would trade all those seconds for a couple wins. Guaranteed. So I think as far as we're concerned, everything has to be right? If things aren't right, if something's off, something as simple as one of my guys does not dump the paint out of their hopper in between points and put a fresh load in there, so when we go out in sweet spot, we don't bounce somebody. Because you bounce one guy, that could be the difference between the Dynasty game. We bounce Arturo going into that can. If that ball breaks on him, they don't have a chance. We win by 2. We don't even go to overtime, right? You go back and watch some of the other stuff. If when Harry gets shot, the ref doesn't have to come pull him out. He just stands up and calls himself out. He doesn't hold the game up another half a second. We get another point. Like, there's all kinds of little things that happen that drastically affect the outcome of these games. And if they don't go your way, one false start. If Keith gets a bad start off the board and doesn't get out as fast as he can and gets clipped and gets shot out, now we're playing with 4, arguably one of our best attackers, if not our best attackers, off the field, right? Could we still win? Yeah, because losing him drastically affect our chances of winning that point? Of course it does. So it's almost like everything has to be, the stars have to align for you to win these events, which is why it's such a big feat with Fit taking 3 in a row. That's a huge deal. They're the best team in paintball right now. You can't argue it. Do I think that we're better than them? I think depending on the day, we are definitely better than them. Do I think we're better than them right now? No, because we're not. They won 3 events in a row, and they are the best team in paintball right now. Until they get beaten, that's the case. Now, our job is to go out of this next event and kick the shit out of everyone and hope they're in the finals and we see them there and beat the shit out of them there. That's our job. Or to knock them out. Actually, it'd be better if we played them first match on Sunday and knocked them out and made them take like 7th or 8th. That way it opens the series back up for us. That would be best case scenario.
So let's talk, speaking of Fit, let's talk about start talking about these brackets here about to go down at the Midwest Open. So bracket A, it's Fit, Uprising, Heat, Infamous, and Leverage. As far as, so typically how I do this with the guests is I kind of ask who you think the top 2 are going to be, and then do you think a wild card is going to come out of that bracket? And then is that the toughest bracket, aka the bracket of death? So Fit, Uprising, Heat, Infamous, and Leverage. What do you think are going to be the 2 teams that come out of that bracket as the top 2 teams?
First, poor Leverage. That's what I would like to say about that bracket. That is not an easy thing for Leverage. Honestly, that one, like, it depends on what Infamous shows up. If like Infamous shows up with all their guys and they're ready to play, that's definitely going to be a wild card bracket. Between Infamous, Uprising, Heat, and Fit, you have 4 teams that could go deep at a tournament at any given time, right? So like if that's not the bracket of death, it's pretty damn close. But yeah, no, I definitely think a wild card's coming out of that one. I would say more likely than not, it's going to be Heat and Fit as 1 and 2, Uprising or Infamous as the wild card. depending on how things unfold with those guys.
Yeah, and this is already, unfortunately for Leverage, part of the conversation. One pro team does get relegated at the end of the season, and then the top semi-pro team will come up. Now, things could get crazy again. Team could buy a spot or merge with the team. I mean, it's, that kind of is something that happens on a quasi-regular basis. It did this last year. But Leverage is in a really tough position. It's basically NYX and Leverage. Well, Energy Elite's down there too, but if you look at Energy Elite, we'll discuss them when we get to them in bracket D. But Leverage is sitting 0-8 with a -32 for the year. Whereas you look at Energy Elite, they're also 0-8, but at a -9, and they had 7 overtime games in a row. So substantially better in a row. Substantially better. They ended up losing that last game by 2, but it's been a wild ride for Energy Elite, whereas pretty much everyone that plays Leverage, it's been that team by first-degree murder. I think they scored 1 point at the last event. Let me double-check that real quick. Leverage at the last event scored 1 point. They were 1-20. 1.4, 20 points against, -19. Lost by the mercy rule to Hurricanes Damage, you guys. And then almost got mercy ruled by Impact and had a closer game against the Tauntauns on the day that Tauntauns were better, too. No, Tauntauns had to win that game. And then they had a cool story. But it's just been a really rough road for Leverage. So they are at the bottom of the barrel right now and already potentially facing relegation. They basically need to have an event where they, make a Sunday to get them out of the conversation, and then have New York Extreme and Energy Elite continue to be bottom of the barrel. Because after that, we go up to 17th place. And, then you start getting to teams that have 2 wins, because it's basically 0-8, 0-8, 0-8 for Energy Elite, Extreme, and Leverage. And then you go to Aftermath and Sea Dogs at 17th, 16th. And Infamous is actually at 15th. Aftershocks at 14th. All those teams sitting at 2 and 6 overall for the season right now. But yeah, no, I'm with you. Poor Leverage in that one, because I totally agree, man. Like, Infamous has had a rough beginning to the year. Starting last season, I love that roster. They just have not been able to put it together and just haven't really been able to find their form. But I do still really like that roster. And then, Heat at the 3rd, and then Uprising, and how consistent they've been making both Sundays. Yeah, that's a nasty bracket. But yeah, no, Joey, I definitely agree. I think that that could potentially be a wild card bracket for sure. And then it's up to Leverage, man. You have to prove that you deserve to be here. So this is the best league in the world, and they earn the right to be in this league by winning the spot. They didn't buy their way in, but it has been a really rough go of it for Leverage for the first 2 events, and they are currently the worst team on the bubble right now. Let's move on to your guys' bracket B. Dynasty, Damage, Arsenal, who had a really good look at the last one, Royal City Sea Dogs, scrappy fun team to watch, and then Aftermath in Tier 5. Aftermath not too long ago was a top 4 team. Obviously, they've had a lot of changeover, but that team trains. They don't train as much as Legion or Fit does, but those guys play pretty much every single weekend, and they've been grinding very hard at ASG here in Southern California. Could be a tough bracket, Joey. What are your thoughts on your guys' bracket here?
Could be a tough bracket, Matty. Honestly, it's like you said, if Aftermath shows up, they could be really, really good. If Aftermath shows up like they have so far this year, they'll be a hard game, but they'll lose, because that's what they've done this year, right? So I don't know what kind of Aftermath you're going to get. The Sea Dogs, definitely a scrappy team. I think as people play them more and get to see them more and get to learn more about them, I think we'll get to see who the real Sea Dogs are. I think they're kind of like an opposite story of Leverage, right? Where Leverage came in and they're just getting their teeth kicked in. I think a kickback on that real quick. I honestly think that at this point, Leverage is playing spoiler more than anyone. If Leverage beats any of those teams in that bracket, they turn that bracket on its head just by 1 win in that bracket. So where if the Sea Dogs win in our bracket, it doesn't necessarily turn it on its head, because you could see Sea Dogs and Aftermath going at it. One of those teams has to win. Any of those teams could beat anyone in our bracket, depending on if they play good and the other teams don't play as good. It should be us, Dynasty, and potentially wild card with Revo. I think Revo played well at the last one. I think Chris has those guys humming a little bit. I still think that they have some growing to do before they're ready to be a consistent Sunday team. But you never know. I thought the same thing about them at the last event, and they went 4-0 in the prelims, and they beat good teams to do it, right? So Could they do it again? I hope not, because I'm in that bracket. But it should be us in Dynasty and potentially Revo coming out as the wild card.
Revo, aka Arsenal. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Sea Dogs, I think what's interesting, like you said, okay, Sea Dogs plays Aftermath. One of those teams has to win. One of those teams have to lose. There's no ties here in the Pro Division. And they have played each other this season at the first event. And that was, so the Sea Dogs beat Uprising at the last event in Atlantic City. And in their third game in Tampa, beat Aftermath 4-1. So those are the 2 wins that the Sea Dogs has. Again, Uprising at the last event and against Aftermath. And it was by 3, too. It was a 4-1 game. So maybe advantage to the Sea Dogs there. It is tough to beat a team twice, but, obviously some months in between. And now that the Sea Dogs we're hitting summer up in Canada, those guys have been able to practice a little bit more. It's kind of tough for them to practice in the beginning of the year from what I was hearing. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's always fascinating to see how these match up because, Dynasty with their new roster has looked outstanding this season. They're sitting second overall. Their overall record is 10-3 with a +14, pretty solid. They're 3-2 on Sundays with a second and a fourth. And then you guys are due. Arsenal, like you said, I mean, what a different event for Arsenal. They really kind of started to look like what all of the, the guys that were singing the praises of that roster. Hey, man, Arsenal's going to look good. We don't know when it's going to happen. Love that team. Love the roster. High-powered offense, blah, blah, blah. They did really look solid at that last event and did not look good at the first event. And then we have Sea Dogs and Aftermath. So I think that's going to be a fun one to see it play out from, for Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to bet against you guys in Dynasty right now, especially with the pickup of Marcelo. He's going to be really hungry for greatness. I think you guys are going to be fighting extra hard for Brian. And just based on last year and how the situation was, again, same exact situation, 6th, 7th, 1st. So, and you guys have historically done pretty well at these kind of staggered fields. And then, Arsenal still has a chip on their shoulder and something to prove. This is going to be a really fun bracket. I can't wait to see what happens. Let's move on to bracket C, though. Yeah, I don't know if that's a bracket of death. It could be, though, if Sea Dogs have been training and look good, and I know Aftermath's been training their asses off. So that could be the bracket of death, too. Legion, Tauntauns, Diesel, Aftershock, and New York Extreme in bracket C. What do you think?
I think Extreme and Leverage are definitely fighting for those bottom 2 spots. I think that's going to be a rough one for Extreme to actually go in and actually get their win. That's a hard bracket. I'd almost say this is the other bracket potentially of death, in my opinion. I think Shock's underperformed this whole year. They have a roster that they could do well with. I do believe last year they took everyone by surprise, which is weird to say, but it's true. I think a lot of people have figured them out a little bit more, but they have the potential to go deep at any of these tournaments. It's just a matter of they can show up and do it. Who else is in this one?
So it's Legion, Tauntauns, Diesel, Shock, and Extreme. Extreme, again, as we were talking about, 0-8, -26 for them on the year. Yeah, Shock's, it's been a rough one for Shock. They're sitting at 3-5 overall, missed both Sundays. A little bit closer at the first one, went 2-2 with an even point spread, didn't make it. 1-3 with a -4 at the last event. And then Diesel's been looking pretty tough. Making both Sundays,
Diesel,
2-2 at the first one.
I think Diesel, Tauntauns, and the Russians are definitely the as of this year, the best 3 in that bracket. Diesel, it's a coin flip. I think this layout might not be great for them. This is not a snake dominant field, which is going to hurt them with mouse. Even the snake side is not that dominant. I think the middle is more dominant, which they have Clint up the middle, who's a really good middle player. So could be. Tauntauns, depending how much practice they get on this is not a field where you can just ram jam a snake, which is what they did really well at the last one. And Fedorov found his feet on Saturday and Sunday to help them. And, Markey was on with a shot on the break. So I think that this might be a little bit more of a struggle for them because this is definitely going to be a harder field to figure out fast. So depending on how much practice time they actually get on the layout, I don't know if the Tauntauns are going to have a great event. The Russians on this layout, I don't know enough about it yet, but this does not seem like a Russian-friendly layout. This the run around and blowing everything up and shooting their guns may not end well on this one. So they're a smart bunch of guys, though, and crafty vets, and I think they can slow down if they have to. I just don't know if they know how to break. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Russians on this layout. And again, my opinion on them could change off after tomorrow and Saturday as far as how the layout's actually playing. But based off what I saw today, might be a rough one for them. Even a rough one for them, though, is still making Sunday. They just might go 3-1 or 2-2 with a high margin and skate their way in. But I see, realistically, I see the Russians and Diesel coming out of that bracket. I think the Tauntauns will be close, but I don't think they'll make it through. And I think Shock will be close, but I don't know if they'll make it through either. I don't know if will be able to find their groove in time. That's a rough bracket to try to find your groove in.
Yeah, and this layout is going to be a little bit interesting too. If it was a standard layout with a snake, a D side, and kind of a whether it's a slower or more aggressive middle, it's just a different conversation. With this one, there's a lot more intangibles based on the tactics that we don't really know about yet. Until everyone kind of figures out these shots and dials in where the attacks come from. Because if you look at Legion, if you look at, say, the combo on the snake side of Justin Rabikoff and Alexander Burtnikoff has obviously paid a ton of dividends for him. And then on that D side, there's, Karslev will always have like 4 routes that he'll be able to run. And, they're going to risk him sometimes instead of going to do D2 or D3 off the break. Kirill's just been an absolute phenom because he's been around forever, but an absolute master veteran up the middle. And, Sergey's always just there and relevant, whether it's on offense or defense. I agree with you, though. I think that they're crafty enough veterans that they will figure it out regardless, and they'll kind of let us know how offensive you can play this field. That's kind of how they've been doing it for the past couple seasons, especially last season, because we would have these conversations, show offline, whatever, and then all of a sudden the Russian Legion would show up and be like, all right, well, they're going to show us how to play offense on this field. Which obviously worked out to a season's title before the rise of fit towards the end. But that they're kind of one of the teams I'm the most interested to see what happens with them in the prelims, just based on the tactics scenario with this staggered layout. And then the Tauntauns, the big question there is, okay, well, can they do it twice? Because they were not good day one, really stepped up. They kept their point margin close enough that they were relevant by winning those 2 games and skating through into the wild card round. But they had a rough go of it on day one. But you are right. Fedorov definitely found his form and looked like Konstantin Fedorov on that D side. Axel was going off on the snake side, spits him up the middle. Markey's shot was absolutely died. Colombo was great too. So they were, and then when they would bring Hugo in as the offensive option in the snake. But I'm just kind of wondering, how does that all work on this layout? If we were going into a standard layout, I feel like they would be a little bit easier for him to keep the momentum going into this battle. But now we have a totally different tactical situation. So, and yeah, there's a lot of vets on that. There's really no rookie dudes. Okay, yeah, Markey hasn't been around forever and Hugo's pretty new. But other than that, those dudes have been around forever. So I think that they got enough minds to figure it out. But I just don't know how that's going to work, because it is a different tactical situation. It's not going to be a complete dovetail fit from the vibe that they brought on Saturday and Sunday. And are they going to be able to get it together quick enough here in practice and then early enough in the prelims? Because Shock's hungry for it, man. Like, I know Todd well and those guys well, and it is not sitting nicely in the Aftershock camp that they haven't made a Sunday in 2025. So I promise you, they're going to do everything in their power to try to, make sure that they can bust through to Sunday to give themselves a chance. So that's also going to be, from a story perspective and a tactics and strategy perspective, a pretty interesting bracket. So let's head to I don't know. Just again, I want your thoughts on it as always. But this, I don't bracket, but this could be an interesting one just based on who's sitting in Tier 5. So you got Impact, X Factor, Hurricanes, Ironman, and Energy Elite. Let's start at the bottom of the bracket. What are your thoughts on Energy Elite?
Didn't they set a record? I'm pretty sure that the 7 overtime losses in a row has to be an all-time record in all of NXL, PSP, 10-man, 7-man, 5-man, 3-man, any event ever. I think that and then their 8th game, they still lost by a point. It wasn't an overtime. So I think they set 2 records. They set the most one loss. I thought that was the last game.
It was by 2. Yeah.
That's
Sorry.
right.
The last game was by 2. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were in the
But
VIP
still,
and I was cheering
your
for them to
point
get that
stands.
last point because I was like, if you can get 8 in a row, 1-point losses, that's a second record. You have 7 overtime losses and then an 8th 1-point loss record. I mean, that you set 2 records in one season, not the best record to set, but it's still setting a record. It just shows that they're close, right? Which is scary in a way if you think about it. I mean, that first event, if those 4 overtime points go the other way, they go 4-0 and they're in Sunday. So them as a 5 seed is the scariest 5 seed by far, just based off of this year. And no one can argue that. That would be the most ridiculous argument ever if anyone said that team is not scary at a 5 seed, right? Like that to me is the scariest 5 seed team right now, just based off this year, by far. So, if they're able to figure out that last point at this event, I mean, they could surprise. That could be the team. That could be the Tauntauns of the last event where you're like, where'd they come from?
No, I'm with you, bro.
Sure,
like that's what I'm looking at. I was watching. They're obviously watching all their games and calling their games, and I'm just like, this is insane. Event 1, I'm like, wait, 4 overtime losses, Jesus Christ. Then we go to the second event, and I saw Damian Vasquez, a buddy of ours here from Southern California, and they were heading into their last game, and I was like, hey, let's go, Damian, another overtime match. What do you think? And he's just like, Matty, are you serious? No, I don't want another overtime. No, I don't want. We don't want nothing to do with overtime, and it's not been good luck for us. I'm like, dude, you guys have lost by 1. You're this close, bro. Like, let's go, Damian. And but it was just, you could just see that look of pure, unadulterated, like unmasked frustration. That's kind of where they were at. It's like, what do we need to do? Like, what else can we do in this situation? I mean, we're hanging with all these teams. Like you had just said that second sucks, right? Because then you go back and you are just going through every possible potential variable that could have happened. Like, oh, if I had dove in there instead of run and gunned in there, if I had not engaged in that battle when I got shot instead of just hit, or if I, dumped my paint out and got whatever. Every single one of those things, they've done that for every single game they played in 2025 because every game has been that close. And they're still sitting, third to last with no wins on the board, but every single game has been an utter war, a complete battle. And it's been very fun to watch. But I'm with you, bro. Like, you literally, exactly what you said, that's what I would have said. That's the one team I don't want in my bracket. One, they're due. They're very due. And you don't want that to come due when they are playing you. So they're absolutely due. Yep. And then also talk about being hungry. I mean, Jesus Christ, dude, I don't know what else could possibly make you hungrier to train and get better than to be that close that many times against all these really good teams and know that you just need to get a little bit better. And like you said, you could be going 4-0 and moving on to Sunday as a favorite. Like, they're that close. And you look at this roster, it's kind of a cool story because a lot of these dudes we've seen on different teams throughout the years, and they just put, that team together. And in the offseason, a lot of people are like, oh man, dude, Energy Elite could be rough for them. And yeah, they haven't won a game yet, but it's been pretty impressive, to see where they're at, so it's kind of cool. So what do you think about Ironman, Hurricanes, X Factor, and Impact?
Ironman have been not so sweet this year. They are competitive and they look hungry and they look like they want it, but it just hasn't really been working for them. I feel like them and Shock are kind of in the same boat right now, which is probably why they're in the same area of the finishing right now. I mean, they could be good if things go well. They're always going to be competitive. They're always going to be in the fight. But I don't know if they have enough depth and enough ability yet to quite get over that hill. I think them losing Stephen O'Mara hurt them a bunch. Like, he was an X factor on the field for them, where he could, he was good for winning at least a match or two for them every, the one point that he pulls off of those close games that they were losing. And I don't know if they found the fill for that void yet. Doesn't mean they can't find it. Doesn't mean they won't find it. They have all the other pieces out there. Tom Guess has been playing out of his skull. Henry's been on point. I think they're very solid with their back area and their control. They just need to get their attackers back on point. I think losing Geiger hurt them a little bit too. They don't have quite the same ram jam that they had in the Snake. Obviously, with the unfortunate passing of Caro, that's going to hurt them a bunch. And who knows? I mean, that could be something that inspires them to come out and play on another level. we had something similar to that with the Tim thing in 2020. And, the next event we played, it was significantly after Tim's passing, but it was a World Cup. And I think we lost the X Factor in the semifinals by a point. And the guys literally played like it was everything, right? And then we were doing it for Tim, right? That was the mindset. So I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to run into the Ironman at this event just because I don't know where their mindset's going to be. And I don't know what kind of extra gear they may have. The Hurricanes, having a much better year than I thought they'd have. I didn't think they were going to do bad this year, but they're actually ultra competitive in every one of their matches. They beat us at the last event. Beat ourselves, but they beat us at the last event. With that being said, I mean, they put us in a position where we ended up beating ourselves. But, the thing with them is I think they need to learn how to win the really important games late on Saturday. It seems like they had a struggle with that, even going back into last year where, they're on the cusp of making it to Sunday and then they just step on it. So I think without a doubt, they're good and they're close. I just don't know if they have it yet. X Factor, like you said, they've one of the more, if not at this point now with Heat not being as consistent, they are the most consistent team in paintball. They're the most consistent team to make it the farthest without winning an event over the last, 6 years, you said? 7 years? So they'll go far.
Yeah,
2019. Will they
2019.
win? I think them losing Axel hurt them a bunch this year, and I don't know if they were able to replace that. I mean, Billy's a great player and he's a workhorse, but you got to have something different for people to look at, not just Ram Jam Billy. Comes late Sunday, that Ram Jam shit wears you down pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, Billy's been a workhorse for him for a long time. If things slow down with his crafty ability, maybe that will work out for him. They have a lot of crafty guys on that team. X Factor is one of those guys or one of those teams where they've been so due for so long, and I've liked their roster for so long. It's just, it's got to be wearing a little frustratingly thin on their inability to win a paintball tournament for them because of how often they've been that, again, so consistent, making Sundays, second places. I mean, I was counting up their second places earlier. And I mean, they have a ton of second places in the past 5 years. Obviously a team that's, won tournaments, won a world title before. Those guys know how to win, but for whatever reason, past 5 years, they just have not been able to get to the top of the mountain, but they are definitely due. I do agree with you. I would not want to play the Ironman here, fighting for, Jerry Carl, RIP, rest in peace to Jerry with his untimely passing. I mean, for sure, in every single huddle, they're going to be like, let's do this for Jerry. So they're going to have a potential superpower to summon here at this event. I'm wondering if they're going to pick anybody up for, that roster spot, though, because with it looks like if they don't bring anyone else with no Jerry here, they'll have, let's see, 2, 4, 6, they'll have 8, which is enough. But we just talked about at the open of the show how important depth is when you're in the pro league. 8 is enough. I think that's it. I mean, if you look at how the Ironmen have done too, they've gone 2-2 at both events and -4 at the first one. So had no chance of really making it, but 2-2 with a +1 and didn't make it through at the last one. It is the Ironman is. I'm getting some insight. Oh, okay, that was from you. I thought that was from our producer Darren. They might be getting a new body. No, okay. Talk about that anyway. But so I don't know what's going to be the deal with the Ironman. But again, not a team that I would want to play at this event. I would not want to play Energy Elite either at this event. The Hurricanes have been very scrappy, 3-1 at the first event, and 2-2. So I don't know, man. That's this, and then with X Factor and Impact, obviously Impact no Marcelo, but that's a super deep team. So you could argue a bunch of different ways. One way you could argue that any team that loses Marcelo, you're losing one of the best players in the league. So that's definitely going to hurt your roster. But it is Impact, and they have guys that have played that same spot and played it to MVP caliber heights and won tournaments. So I don't, you could really argue that either way. I don't know. So I guess my last question is, what do you think? You could, if you want to make this argument and you think it's your bracket, go for it. But what do you think is the hardest bracket here? If you were looking at this from God's eye view with no skin in the game.
1 and 5. 1 and 5. Or 1 and 4. 1 and 4.
Well, I was like, there's only 4.
Bracket 1. Bracket 1 and bracket 4. Those are the 2 hardest ones.
Yeah. I don't agree with 4 or 1 because of leverage in tier. I guess maybe to actually make it on because everyone smashes leverage, you're saying. So then it's really a 4-horse race. So that makes it extra hard.
Yep.
Okay. I see. I'm picking up what you're down there.
Because you're gonna have 3 teams basically going into Sunday that are either 3-0 or 2 teams that are 3-0 and 1 that's 2-1, or you're gonna have 2 2-1s and a 3-0. No different than what we had at the last one with leverage in our bracket, where we went in to play Impact on Saturday. We were 2-1. Impact was 3-0, and then Hurricanes were 2-1. Right. So depending what happens with all those things, you could have 3 teams moving on. I mean, realistically, you could have those 3 teams all playing each other because that's going to be a nightmare bracket because the one team, is not so sweet. Which that's not even a disrespect to those guys, right? Like all the other teams you're looking at, even like NRG, they're a new team, quote unquote, but all those dudes have had years of pro experience. NYX. Half those guys have played together for multiple years, right? Like those guys literally went from being semi-pro to pro. They're the only team that's coming into this like, hi, we're new here. So it's not going to be easy for them. And they keep getting the draws that you just look at and be like, man, where's their give me? They've never gotten a game where they're like, oh, that one they have a chance at. Like every game you look at, you're like, ooh. So, yeah, I don't know. That, to me, is why that becomes a hard bracket. Not because you have 5 good teams, but because you have 4 teams that anyone could win and 1 team that, if they win, God bless them.
Well, I mean, kind of to talk to your point. So if you look at Leverage's games so far, so they gave at the first event, they lost by 5 to Infamous. And in their first game and lost by Impact by 6, got shut out in both those games. But they gave a game to both Shock and Uprising, which then put Shock and Uprising. Now they win those games, but they only win by 1. So it's a massive spread is huge out here. Spread's absolutely huge. And then at the last one, it was worse because they only put 1 point on the board, and it was the Tauntauns. That was a 2-point game, and then that puts the Tauntauns in a tough situation because they're only bringing a 2-point win on when everyone else is stacking up margin on that game and the W. And again, margin is absolutely massive out here. And if you're watching this, unsure how it works, you get 4 games in the prelims. Ideally, you want to win all of them. But worst case scenario, you need to go 2 wins, 2 losses, and have somewhat of a positive point differential. But as we even mentioned in a couple of these, that does not mean you are going to move on. That just puts you in a higher percentage chance of moving on. And then even if you go 3-1, you could be playing in the wild card round. Let me ask you this question, though, before I let you go, as we've got through the brackets and we're setting the stage for this battle coming up here, 3rd stop on the tour, Midwest Open. But, so we had the 2 teams that, because you and I have had this conversation offline. We've had this over the years on camera, too, either at events or in shows like this. But I just think it was interesting that that the 2 teams that made it to the finals were teams that came out of the wild card round. And then I coached teams in the WCPPL, and my D3 team, who's still first place, shout out to Alliance, were first place overall in the D3, which is the one right below Premier. And so they're sitting at first. We won the first event, and then we were the top seed coming out of 30 coming out of the bracket, or all the brackets. So we get the bye. But now we get a bye, and we're playing Greg Sewers' team, who was warmed up on a win coming out of the wild card. And what happens? We lose, a heartbreaker. And that was kind of the same situation that happened at the event. So the Tauntauns and Fit struggle, fix a lot of stuff, have some really hard conversations, and then they go in and win out from the wild card round to get to the finals. Talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on benefits to disadvantages of that situation. Because we saw that at World Cup too. You and I were having this conversation at World Cup.
So we've won tournaments coming out of the wild card before, and we've won tournaments being undefeated through the prelims before too. I think it's more of I really don't think it matters that much. I don't think it matters if you limp in the wild card or not. I think the only thing that matters is the abuse on the bodies, and depending on the temperature outside. Like this event may matter more than AC because it's going to be significantly hotter. So that extra game is going to put tax on your body. It's going to wear you down a little bit more. So most of the time, I don't think it matters. I think most of the time it kind of is what it is, and it's not that big of a deal. I think this event, it could potentially be a big deal, having to play the wild card. I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's a disadvantage or an advantage. I'd prefer not to, because every time you play, it gives you another opportunity to lose. You could be argued that you get an opportunity to win, but I'd rather win that next game and make it to the semifinals than win that game to make it to the top 8 and then lose the next game. So, yeah, I don't know. I see both sides of it, and I'm good with it. I think it creates a great story for you guys to be able to tell as far as how the events play out. But I think if you go back and do the history on it and look at everything about it, there's probably been as many wildcard wins as there has 4-0 wins. So, you know, I think it's great for the story as far as play-wise. Once we make Sunday, I don't really care. I just want to win that first game we play, whichever one it is. Wild card, top 8, give me a bye to the finals. I just want to win that first game. I just want to win that first point. I want to go out and I want to win that first point. After we win that first point, I want to win the next point. So, you know, again, I've seen both sides of it. I think depending on the weather, depending where you're at, like if it's a Texas and it's a rain, swampy, shitty mess, you definitely don't want to play that extra game. That extra game is awful. If it's 100 degrees outside, you don't want to play that extra game. If it's Atlantic City, it doesn't matter as much. The weather is beautiful out there. You know, if it's the first event of the year in Florida or wherever we're at and the weather's nice, it doesn't really matter. If it's too cold, it matters. You don't really want to play that super cold game because then the paint's more fragile, and that could potentially be why you don't win. You just want to get rid of the excuses, and as long as there's no excuses, I don't know if that game hurts you.
All right, last question and let you go. Who do you think you're going to be seeing in the finals? You make it to the finals, and on the other side, point 1, who's there? And if it's not, if PB Fit would be an easy pick, but if it's not Fit, who else do you think is going to be there?
Well, I would probably want to pick X Factors because since we started winning again, we play them a lot for that first, second point game, and we haven't lost them yet. So I just would like it to be them again, or potentially Heat because we've beaten them a lot in the finals too. Or, I mean, honestly, I don't really care. Like Dynasty would be good, just to get that monkey off our back and beat the shit out of them. You know, I mean, everyone's pretty much screwed. I asked the Magic 8 Ball earlier if we were going to win, and it said all signs point to yes. So it's not really looking good for anyone else. Everyone else should probably have done that sooner. They probably didn't, so that's kind of on them, not planning.
Well, Joey Blute, always a pleasure to hear your thoughts on everything. I wish you and Tampa Bay Damage best of luck. And again, everyone, Marcelo Magat going to be playing his first event with Tampa Bay Damage, who has won quite a few tournaments here in the past few years and many over their long, illustrious careers. Yeah, looking forward to this one. Like as we've been talking about, I think there's a lot of compelling stories here in these 4 brackets. And then we have this unconventional layout, and we have the 3-man that's also going to be going down that we will be televising on Thursday. So stay tuned to get the times for that and the bracket breakdowns for that. Matty Marshall, thank you guys so much for joining us. And the Midwest Open going to be going down June 20th through the 23rd. I'll see you there.